Welcome to this meeting of council. The meeting will be live streamed and recorded, and the voices and images of those participating in the meeting may be captured as part of this recording. Obviously, we have a large volume of guests with us here tonight in the gallery. As you can see, we've done our best to accommodate you in what is a very small room. We've opened up the foyer and the foyer meeting room as the best way that we can make that space available to you. I'd just say to the people that are in the foyer, we do consider you part of the gallery. As part of the gallery, we expect that you are watching and listening to our proceedings but not participating. In terms of the access to the meeting for the foyer, there are screens out there. It is important to note that the audio will continue to come from the chamber, and you might notice that the delay on the image in the foyer is about 30 seconds. So that's the best access that we could provide by not providing the audio out to the foyer, because it might create some confusion. So the image is there for you, but you should listen to the audio that you hear coming from the chamber. Indigo Shire Council acknowledges the original custodians of these lands. The people of the rivers and the hills have walked these lands for thousands of years, as well as today, and we pay respect to the elders of the past and present. As councillors, we have all taken an oath to carry out our duties in the best interests of the people of Indigo Shire, and to do this in a fair and impartial manner. We are all committed to exercising the council's powers and functions to the best of our skills and judgment. Do we have any apologies or leaves of absence? None, CEO. Item 4 is declarations of conflict of interest. Councillor Shepherd?
Yep. So I have a general conflict of interest with item 13.2, the Beechworth Childcare and Kindergarten Centre, expression of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. As we have questions in the open forum that relate to that item and the item itself, we will ask you to leave the room for both those questions and the item, and then we'll welcome you back in for the remainder of the agenda. Are there any other conflicts of interest with the agenda tonight? If not, then councillors, I'd like to propose a motion that we adjust tonight's council meeting agenda. I would like for us to move the open forum down to just before item 10, petitions, and I'd like us to bring item 13.2, Beechworth Childcare and Kindergarten Centre, expression of interest, forward to that point. So that's the best way that I think that we can deal with both of those items, is to have the open forum followed by that item in the interest of those that are present with us in the gallery. To that effect, can I ask somebody to move a motion to adjust the agenda? Moved by Councillor Harvey, seconded by Councillor Dowsley. CEO, is that captured in terms of what that should reflect? Can I put that to the vote? All those in favour? Carried unanimously. So with that in mind, we'll skip over item 5, open forum, and we'll go to community and council achievements. Can I ask councillors, are there any community or council achievements that you'd like to recognise tonight? No. Item 7 is condolences. Are there any condolence motions that you would like to raise tonight? Item 8 is confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. The recommendation is that 1, that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 25th of February 2025, as published on council's website, be amended at item 13.2, contract 2223/29-02, construction of Barmetha Park sports nets, page 195, to adjust the total of the contract awarded from $535,488.25 to $535,024.90, excluding GST. 2, that the following minutes be confirmed. Minutes of the council meeting held on the 25th of February 2025 as amended in point 1, and B, confidential minutes of the council meeting held on the 25th of February 2025 as provided to councillors under separate cover. And 3, that the amended minutes from the council meeting held on the 25th of February 2025 be republished to the council's website. Do I have somebody to move that motion? Moved Councillor Landell, seconded Councillor Dowsley. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? No? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 9 is business arising from previous minutes, and there are none. So ordinarily we would now move to item 10, but as I said, with the adjustment to the agenda, we'll now go backwards to item 5, which is the open forum. So we'll do the open forum in two parts tonight. We have some questions that are not relating to item 13.2 that we will ask and have answered first. And then at the completion of those, we will move on to the childcare item as well. I need to ask that the person is present in the gallery and confirm that that is the case. Obviously, that's easy with people that are in the room, but if there's someone out in the foyer whose question we're about to ask, please just let us know and we can confirm that you're in the gallery. So tonight we'll start with a set of questions from Robin McLeish, and I can confirm that Robin is in the gallery tonight. The $11.5 million Rutherglen Silo Art project was cancelled when the $10 million grant application to the Growing Regions Fund Stage 1 was not included in the list of approved projects. A co-contribution of $1.5 million that was to be sourced from the previously approved $8.5 million Murray to the Mountains Rail Trail Enhancement Project was no longer required, and the business case and concept prepared by Urban Enterprises, which cost the council $125,000, was also no longer required. Question 1. The application for the Growing Regions Fund stated that the project must be completed by December 31st, 2025. The Rutherglen Arts Project business case used a 20-year financial analysis, and the capital works were to take place over 9 years. This project did not meet the application conditions. Which entity was responsible for the preparation of the grant application that we were not permitted to see? CEO.
Thank you. Mayor Price, through you. Thanks, Rob McLeish, for the question. Can I apologise to you tonight in advance that normally we would have had time to quickly get answers to your question. Unfortunately, the staff who would have pulled this together were very busy preparing for the next agenda item. So can we take the first question on notice? Your question itself is actually quite straightforward, but preamble has a lot of statements in there. We need to just go through and just to address some of those statements to make sure those statements are correct, and then we'll get that question and answer to you. So we'll take that on notice, and obviously the minutes, the response will be provided to you directly, and we'll include the responses in the minutes of the next meeting.
Thank you. The introductory statement for the second question is, the Capital Works Monitor states that Tourism Northeast is funding the $1.5 million Beechworth Railway Precinct Enhancement Project. The question, we have no information regarding this funding, but assume that it is a government grant. Which government authority will provide the grant funds? What was the amount requested in the grant application, and when was the grant approved? Director of Infrastructure Services, Ian Ellett.
Thank you, Robin, and through you, Mayor Price. Robin, the money for the Beechworth Railway Precinct upgrade wasn't made through a separate grant application. It was part of the $8.5 million rail trail enhancements provided by the state government that was referred to in the preamble of question 1.
Thank you for your questions, Robin. The second set of questions comes from Jamie Kronborg, and I can confirm that Jamie is in the gallery tonight. The first question, following the significant success of High Country Hops on the 21st and 22nd of March, how will Council provide in the Beechworth Police Paddock the same expanded event footprint secured by the Hops hosts to other organisations seeking to use this historic public space for community festivals? The Director of Community and Economic Development, Sally Rice.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Price. So Council is extremely supportive of community events, and indeed provided substantial support to High Country Hops. The footprint for this event trialled an interim reset. This was based on using different zones across the police paddock site. Activities were assessed based on their level of risk to the site, and different activities were permissible or not in the different zones. This occurred while Council is progressing the necessary investigation to define the balance of conservation, management and preservation of cultural heritage both above and below the ground, universal access principles to significant heritage sites and activation, including public programs, general public visitation and events. This work will be completed in 2025 and will inform hire conditions for the police paddocks going forward.
Second question, how does the council describe recognised conservation values and community expectations that would allow it to fit out and use National Heritage listed buildings in the Beechworth Administrative Precinct, such as the unique Chinese Protectorate Office or Sub-Treasury Gold Office, as council staff officers? Director of Community and Economic Development, Sally Rice.
Thanks again. The late 2024 water ingress events at the Burke Museum has necessitated specific risk mitigation works on the collections. Additional resources will temporarily support museum staff to carry out this work and through the museum roof conservation project. The Historic Precinct Experience Master Plan remains the direction for the precinct and includes exhibition and cultural activation of each building authentic to the building's story and original purpose. Council staff office space is temporary and facilitates the critical collection management work following the water ingress.
Thank you, Director. The remainder of the questions relate to item 13.2. So at this point in time, Councillor Shepherd, I'll get you to declare your conflict.
So I have a general conflict of interest with this item. I have a close family member who's a member of the Beechworth Community Early Years Learning Centre Board.
And Councillor Shepherd, will bring you back into the meeting at the completion of these open forum questions and of the agenda item. Okay, so in front of every councillor is a manila folder with over 90 questions that have been submitted from the people that are largely in the gallery and no doubt people that are joining us online. Obviously, our space for open forum is something that we need to define and we need to decide exactly how we would deal with that volume of questions, and all of those questions can't be answered and responded to tonight. We wouldn't have the time to prepare the full responses to them. However, we have been able to theme them up, and full responses will be provided to each of the questions as soon as possible. We're going to respond to a number of questions that represent key themes or similar questions that have been asked by a number of people. And that's the best outcome that we thought that we could work with tonight, was to collate all of your questions, work out some of the common themes, and keep your questions, not make them our own, so that some people can hear their individual questions reflected and represent as many of those questions to the chamber tonight. So that, again, those are those 90 questions. Separate to that, we've also received 6 questions that say to us that they represent over 50 parents of children currently in the Beechworth Community Early Years Learning Centre. We'll ask all of those questions. 2 will be taken on notice, but all of those will be read to the chamber and to the gallery with 4 responses provided. So again, we would like the opportunity to be able to ask and answer all 90 of your questions. We know that you've taken a lot of time and care to write those to us. We have received all of them. We have read all of them. We've received your emails, your phone calls, all of the correspondence over the last few days. If you're unsure about whether we can confirm that, please let me tell you that we can. We've all been discussing this endlessly and have received and noted and considered all of your feedback and correspondence so far. So to begin, I'll start with the questions, as I said, that represent over 50 parents of children currently in Beechworth Community Early Years Centre. So there are joint parent representatives here as the names on those questions tonight, which is Emma McPhee and Diarmid Kelly. Can I confirm that you're both in the gallery tonight? I can. The first 2 questions are taken on notice. Question 1, we are concerned that the risks associated with awarding Alpine Children's Service the lease have not been fully explored. This is because the decision to award the lease to ACS will result in the displacement of Beechworth Community Early Years Learning Centre, the only long daycare offering in Beechworth from the 1st of January 2026. We don't believe that the process has fully considered the risks that would be faced by the community as a result of this course of action. Can we request that a comprehensive risk assessment be completed, which includes social and emotional wellbeing, economic, governance, workforce, environmental, reputational, to fully explore and understand the risks posed to the community if ACS is awarded the lease. As part of this request, we request that the decision is deferred until this risk assessment can be undertaken, and that this risk assessment be provided to councillors to consider alongside the eligible EOI submissions for a vote at the April Council meeting. So again, that question will be taken on notice. Question 2, given the significant amount of community concern around the future of Beechworth Community Early Years Learning Centre and the diverse impacts that can be felt by the community with a change in provider, can Council establish a community reference group to liaise directly between the community, councillors and council staff to inform the risk assessment process? That too is taken on notice. From here, we will answer the questions. Question 3, how can Indigo Shire Council assure the Beechworth community that services delivered through Alpine Children's Services will be governed in the best interests of Indigo Shire residents and not influenced by the priorities or interests of Alpine Shire Council, given their representation on the Alpine Children's Services Board? The Director of Community and Economic Development, Sally Rice.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Price, Alpine Children's Services have indicated that they will establish a parent advisory group for the Beechworth service and the community. The parent advisory group forms a critical link between the community and the board, and as part of the lease negotiations, Indigo Shire will seek to have representation on the board if permitted to do so.
The 4th question, the stated purpose of the EOI process was to identify a provider who could maximise use of this facility and address high community need for early years services. Why does the lease recommendation now require only that the provider occupy the building for the purpose of operating a childcare and kindergarten service without guaranteeing that the successful applicant will fully deliver on the goals of capacity expansion and community responsiveness that justified the EOI in the first place? Can we see a draft lease agreement with milestones and timelines to ensure full utilisation of the space is contractually enforced? The Director of Community and Economic Development, Sally Rice.
Thank you. So Indigo Shire is responsible for the issuing of a lease to a single provider to occupy the Mayday Hills Beechworth Childcare and Kindergarten Centre. To provide childcare and kindergarten services at the Mayday Hills Beechworth Childcare and Kindergarten Centre, a licence for approved places is required from the Department of Education, which is beyond the Council's jurisdiction. This requirement, along with the other relevant Department of Education conditions, will be included within the lease documentation. As part of the lease, the lessees will be asked to undertake the following actions. Firstly, work alongside Indigo Shire Council and the Department of Education to implement modelling to minimise unmet demand and maximise capacity. Secondly, work alongside Indigo Shire Council and Department of Education to implement educational reforms to support access and participation for all children. And thirdly, maintain minimum standards as set out in the National Law and Quality Framework.
Question 5. In the meeting minutes for the Council meeting on the 27th of August 2024, in response to a question raised in relation to the EOI, Questioner 8, Ms Sally Rice, Director of Community and Economic Development, stated, to minimise any disruption and to ensure continuity of service in the interim, Council has extended the current occupancy agreements to allow time for alternative arrangements to be explored in the event that the current occupants are not successful through this EOI process. Should the lease be awarded to ACS, how will Council support Beechworth Community Early Years Learning Centre to relocate, given that the development and approval process for operation at a new location is unlikely to happen for an intake in January 2026? Can Council guarantee a fast-tracked planning approval process if Beechworth Community Early Years Learning Centre is displaced? Director of Community and Economic Development, Sally Rice.
So if the lease is awarded to Alpine Children's Services, council is committed to supporting the current occupants of the site by supporting this transition of early years service providers, working with the current providers to understand this decision, working with the current providers to understand their future goals in terms of early years service provision, and as appropriate, support these entities in their future endeavours. Council will endeavour to support permit applications received and to process them within applicable timeframes.
Question 6. Has consideration been given in the evaluation to the broader economic losses that will flow from outsourcing to a provider in another shire, including organisational revenue leaving Indigo Shire, staff losses, and the impact that has on our town through disrupted childcare for local essential workers such as teachers and doctors? And strategically, has the evaluation considered social benefits versus economic cost? Director of Community and Economic Development, Sally Rice.
So if Alpine Children's Services is the successful applicant, they've indicated they committed to minimising the impact on children, families and staff. A single operator changes the licence and governance arrangements, but services to families and children should not change significantly. Long daycare and kindergarten will still be offered with the same spread of hours and days of operation. Alpine Children's Services has advised that they will meet with each member of staff to discuss their availability, skills and qualifications with the intention to employ members of existing teams. Alpine Children's Services has indicated a strong desire and demonstrated experience in supporting local businesses and creating partnerships with local allied health and community groups, which in turn supports social benefits and the local economy. Alpine Children's Services is a not-for-profit entity and prioritises quality over profit.
So that brings us to the end of that set of questions. As I said, now the next lot of questions are random selections from the 90 that that we have received. Again, the idea that we were trying to do was to get questions that best represent the key themes that keep emerging through all of your questions. So we apologise that we cannot answer all 90 here tonight, but this is the best approach that we've come up with. So question 1 is from Jenna Orman. Can I confirm Jenna is in the gallery? I can. And this one is to cover off the theme of continuity of service. The question: what are the implications of current attendees, wait lists and staff of Beechworth if Alpine Children's Services is the successful applicant? Director of Community and Economic Development, Sally Rice.
So part of the response to this question is repeated from the response to a previous question. If Alpine Children's Services is the successful applicant, they've advised Indigo Shire that they are committed to minimising the impact on children, families and staff. They have indicated that a single operator changes the licence and governance arrangements, but services to families and children should not change significantly. Long daycare and kindergarten will still be offered, with the same spread of hours and days of operation. Alpine Children's Services is a not-for-profit that prioritises quality over profit. If current enrolment information and staff details can be provided by the existing operators, Alpine Children's Services will make every effort to accommodate current attendance and waitlist priorities. Alpine Children's Services has advised they will meet with each member of staff to discuss their availability, skills and qualifications with the intention to employ members of the existing team. This will allow for a seamless transition, providing consistency of care for children currently attending both services. Alpine Children's Services caters to the need of each community and does not use a one-size-fits-all approach. Alpine Children's Services adapts programs, operating hours and staffing to ensure they can accommodate as many children as possible, and they understand the needs of working parents to have safe, nurturing places for children.
The second question we've deemed under the theme community consultation. The question's from Justine Donaldson. Can I confirm that Justine Donaldson's here? I can. The question: Current tenant engagement alone does not constitute community engagement, as the report might suggest. How can you adequately assess the EOI meets the needs of the community if no real community consultation was done? The Director of Community and Economic Development, Sally Rice.
Thank you. The expression of interest process is a tool used by council officers to assess and determine a preferred applicant through a transparent, fair and competitive process. Community consultation is not undertaken as part of the expression of interest evaluation process. As outlined in the expression of interest information pack, each prospective applicant was asked to provide letters of support, references and any additional supporting documentation that applicants felt was relevant to the expression of interest, which presented the opportunity to share community feedback, support and sentiment.
Third question is around fee structure, and the question is from Hazel Mead. Can I confirm Hazel's in the gallery? Hazel might be out in the foyer. Hazel is in the foyer, thank you. The question, if there is a new daycare provider, will their fee structure remain the same as the current providers, or will there be a significant increase in fees to cover their manner of operation? This will have a significant impact on enrolled families who will have no alternative means of care for their children. Director of Community and Economic Development, Sally Rice.
Thank you. The proposed fee structures were reviewed and considered as part of the evaluation process, and the current fee structure may change based on the provider. If Alpine Children's Services is the successful applicant, they have indicated that as a not-for-profit service, they aim to keep fees as low as possible in keeping with their community values. Fees are the same across all Alpine Children's Services, ranging from free kindergarten to long daycare fees, with childcare subsidies applied for eligible families. While fees have not yet been set for 2026, Alpine Children's Services prioritises quality and ensuring fees are manageable for families.
Question 4 is under the theme of transition, and the question is from Josephine Wilson. Can I confirm Josephine's in the gallery? Thank you, Josephine. Question, did the lease EOI factor in a safe transition for the existing service, its staff and its parents or patrons? The Director of Community and Economic Development, Sally Rice.
Transition planning, including honouring existing places for current families, staff and staff retention, and demonstrated experience in the transition of services were considered as part of the expression of interest evaluation process. As the recommended applicant, Alpine Children's Services has advised Indigo Shire that they are committed to minimising the impact on children, families and staff through the transition process. They've indicated that as a single operator, changes the licensing and governance arrangements, but services to family and children should not change significantly. Long daycare and kindergarten will still be offered with the same spread of hours and days of operation.
Question 5 is on the theme of transition, and the question is from Michael Basson. Thank you, Michael. I can confirm you're in the gallery. The question, BCEYLC has a proven track record of delivering a stable, community-focused childcare service that could continue seamlessly into 2026. In contrast, transitioning to ACS introduces significant risks, requiring a full fit-out, staff induction and service establishment over the Christmas period. Any delay would directly impact local business owners, employees, emergency workers, educators and other local families who rely on childcare to work. Given these stakes, what specific measures has Council put in place to mitigate the risk of service disruption, and how will this affect affected families be supported if the only childcare facility in Beechworth is not operational on time? The Director of Community and Economic Development, Sally Rice.
Council is committed to working with both the successful applicant and any of the current occupants that are not successful in the expression of interest process to minimise the disruption of services. Once a preferred applicant is finalised, Council will facilitate further discussion around the details of a transition plan with all parties. If a smooth transition can be negotiated between current occupants and the successful applicant, then there should be no break in programs.
And the last question is on the theme of staff employment, and this question is from Sian Heaton. Can I confirm that Sian's in the gallery? Thank you, she's in the foyer. The question, RE Beechworth Childcare. Many of the staff at BCELY have been employed at the service for many years. Did staff retention factor into the decision matrix at all? The Director of Community and Economic Development, Sally Rice.
Alpine Children's Services have indicated they will seek support from both Beechworth Kinder and the Beechworth Community Early Years Learning Centre to work together to ensure the transition is as smooth as possible for both families and staff. While Alpine Children's Services needs to engage staff directly as an employer, they understand the critical importance of connectivity and consistency of educators for children. Alpine Children's Services fully intend to meet with all impacted staff as soon as practicable and discuss employment opportunities. This will ensure the best outcome for staff, families and children.
That brings us to the end of open forum, and now we will now proceed to the agenda item. As discussed, councillors, that agenda item has been brought forward to this point in the agenda. We'll go to item 13.2. I'll give councillors a moment to get to that point in the agenda. Item 13.2 is Beechworth Childcare and Kindergarten Centre expression of interest. The item is for decision. The recommendation is...
Madam Mayor, I'd like
Councillor
to
Burke.
I move the motion as printed in the agenda with some following additions.
So if you like, Councillor Burke, I can read the recommendation and then you can add in what your addition would be, and we will consider that the motion. So the recommendation is that Council 1 notes that 5 submissions were received in response to an expression of interest advertised for the occupancy of the Mayday Hills Beechworth Childcare and Kindergarten Centre. 2, accepts the expression of interest and subsequent negotiation of lease terms and approves that a lease be entered into by Alpine Children's Services for the application of a licence to provide childcare and kindergarten services, and upon successfully obtaining this licence to operate childcare and kindergarten services at the Mayday Hills Beechworth Childcare and Kindergarten Centre, 1 Childs Way, Beechworth, Victoria 3747, commencing the 1st of January 2026 for a period of 5 years, with the option of a 4-year extension and the following terms. The lessee will A, occupy the building for the purpose of operating a childcare and kindergarten, and 3, delegates authority to the CEO to finalise the details and execute the lease documents on its behalf. Councillor Burke, you'd like to add something to that and then it would become the motion. So Councillor Landells.
Yes, I'd just like to foreshadow that if this item isn't successful, I wish to put another motion toward. Do you want details of what that motion would be?
You can give us a rough, just a quick snapshot of what the sentiment of the motion would be.
Okay, well, that would be to award the contract at Mayday Hills Beechworth Childcare and Kindergarten Centre to Beechworth Community Early Years Learning Centre.
Thank you, Councillor Landells. So at this point, we will note that there has been a motion foreshadowed. At this point in time, we are waiting to see the remainder of the motion that Councillor Burke will put. He has suggested that it is what is listed in the recommendation with the addition of what he's about to read now. Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Mayor. Item point 3 in the recommendation changes to read, directs officers to support and monitor the transition process to ensure that Alpine Children's Services delivers on its stated commitments and that the transition is managed in a safe, transparent and community-focused manner. Also, item 4, requests that officers work closely with Alpine Children's Services to support the delivery of all stated commitments wherever possible and to actively assist in addressing any emerging issues throughout the transition period. Item 5, requires officers to provide regular progress reports to Council on the transition, including updates on key milestones, risks and the delivery of Alpine Children's Services commitments. And item 6, delegates authority to the CEO to finalise the details and execute the lease document on its behalf.
Okay, so councillors, that is now the motion that Councillor Burke has put. To confirm again, it's the recommendation with those inclusions. Councillor Burke, you're the mover for that motion. Can I have a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Councillor Dowsley. Councillor Burke, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. I want to begin by acknowledging the heartfelt feedback I and the other councillors have received from our community, particularly from parents who have children currently enrolled at the Beechworth Community Learning Centre. They've raised concerns including staff uncertainty, indoor and outdoor spaces, the transition timeline and potential disruption. I just want to say very clearly, we have heard you. We understand the issues. We understand that change in early childhood settings can bring real worry for children's parents and staff. Families place enormous trust in their early years educators, and when that trusted environment is subject to change, it naturally raises questions and concerns. The recommendation before us tonight is not a reflection of dissatisfaction with the current provider. Beechworth Community Early Years Learning Centre has served this community with professionalism, dedication and heart. Their team is well respected and the strong emotional bonds between children and educators have come through clearly in the letters and conversations that I've received. At the same time, Council has a responsibility to plan for the long-term needs of our entire community, to ensure more families can access early years services, that wait lists are reduced and the public assets are managed to maximise community benefits. While some families have expressed concerns, others have welcomed the opportunity to improve through expanded access, better facilities and a more stable service model. The EOI process was transparent, competitive and robust. It was assessed by a panel including independent expertise from the Department of Education. Alpine Children's Services emerged with the strongest proposal, one that expands capacity, invests in infrastructure and brings a clear commitment to community engagement and continuity of care. They've committed to retaining suitable current staff, prioritising existing families, personally engaging with parents and carers, and they've committed to creating a smooth and respectful transition. We are not seeking to undo what works, we are building on it. I fully support the call for ongoing communication and consultation with families, and I encourage council officers to ensure the transition plan is not just operational, but compassionate and inclusive. So tonight I move this motion with gratitude for the community's input and confidence that when managed well, this change will deliver lasting benefits for Beechworth families. This motion ensures council plays a strong, accountable role in the transition. I commend the motion to my fellow councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Burke. Councillor Dowsley, would you like to speak as a seconder?
I would, thank you, Mayor. And thanks, Greg, for that description there. Firstly, I'd also like to acknowledge the many, many people who engaged with me via phone and email since the agenda was released. When I nominated to run for council last year, I knew this role would not be easy. Sorry, I'll move closer to the microphone. When I nominated to run for council, I knew this position would not be easy, but my intent has always and will always be to do what I believe is best for the community. The feedback I've received on this EOI process has been varied and plenty. Some of the feedback has been very valid. Some of the feedback I will simply not subscribe to. Criticism of council staff, speculation and sensationalism. The heart of this process has always been to maximise a high quality childcare and kindergarten offering in Beechworth, to reduce wait lists and provide the variety of services the community wants and needs into the future. The process did not arrive out of the blue. It has a long history. Merger discussions, Perkins report, community consultation committee, community vibe report, to name a few of the activities that have been undertaken to plan a way forward. I understand council has made many attempts over several years to facilitate cohesive collaboration between the kinder and childcare services to reduce wait lists. The early years strategy endorsed in 2020 notes wait lists as a significant issue in the community. In August 2024, council at the time adopted a motion to run an EOI process and define the criteria for that process. This EI process has now been completed and delivered a recommendation, and I trust in that process. Many of you have asked for me to vote with my conscience and stated that if I vote for the recommendation, I'm not doing what you elected me for. I refute that. I think I was elected to vote for what I believe is right for the whole community, both now and into the future. To vote for the families on the wait lists, the families that can't access kinder, the families that will need this service in 2, 5 or 10 years' time.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Landells.
Thanks, Mayor Price. I'd like to also start off by thanking the many members of the Beechworth community who have engaged with me on this matter in the past week or so, and also the council staff, especially Director of Community and Economic Development, Sally Rice, and her team, and the selection panel for the enormous and committed work they've put into this process. I believe I have concerns about when looking through how these applicants were assessed against the selection criteria. And some of those concerns relate to the governance aspects, which were referred to in some of the open forum letters about the structure of Alpine Children's Services, particularly I'm sure that Alpine Children's Services do have an appropriate structure for undertaking this sort of work within Alpine Shire. However, this is Indigo Shire, and I'm struggling to see where members on a board who councillors in Alpine Shire and employees in Alpine Shire, how that helps to build community capacity within Beechworth and more broadly Indigo Shire. And also there are just a number of other key points. The recommended provider would be charging just on face value a higher daily rate than the current provider. And I think in the current circumstances where there's obvious cost of living crisis, I think that's quite a significant difference. It's around about $15 per day. And I guess that these are just some of the concerns. There's a number of other concerns I have about that particular, the application in general. And some of those were related, which have been mentioned about risk assessment and the depth of that, but I understand that I don't think that was actually assessed by the panel. But yeah, that's all I'd like to say on that. Thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If neither Councillor Harvey nor Councillor Horn would like to speak to the motion, I would like to speak to the motion. The weight of this decision is hanging heavily on all of us councillors, and I hope that you can appreciate the lengths that I think we've collectively gone to make sure that we hear each individual piece of your feedback. We've made every effort to take your calls, to read your emails, to consider your questions. We've had discussions amongst ourselves. We've been provided with more time with the staff to canvass our questions and your questions on this topic. It is a very difficult decision to make. When we laid out the expression of interest criteria in August of 2024, I had this front of mind because I too have been through a childcare that's transitioned from one service provider to another in the time that my children were in care at Chiltern, and so I know exactly what that process looked like. And I wanted to make sure that I was comfortable with the expression of interest criteria because that is exactly what we can set in motion. And I was comfortable with what those criteria were. And then the task is to reflect back on the process and to see if they confirm the criteria that you set in place. I take that responsibility really seriously, that we're seen to be a council that's driven by a process and that we follow process. I think that a process is a really important part of the governing and the function of council, and I ask of the CEO and the staff that they bring us robust processes that can be tested and that we can have our confidence in. I do have confidence in that process, and I understand that there will be disappointment with what the preferred provider has been recommended as. I've heard from the community to say, here your trust in that provider. Similarly, I've heard the trust in the Beechworth kindergarten provider as well. And we've also heard confidence in Alpine Children's Services. So it's a very difficult decision to make, but at this point in time, unless I can be convinced of any other points from any other councillors, I do have confidence in that process. I am going to confirm that process. And as I say, we will continue to take carriage of this decision and make sure that it is in the best interests of the Beechworth community. So at this point in time, I'll return to the mover. Councillor Burke, would you like to sum up?
No, I think I've been quite clear what I believe, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
So now I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation, which is the motion, including Councillor Burke's addition, raise your hands. And all those against? To confirm, those in favour was Councillor Harvey, Dowsley, Price and Burke, and those against is Councillor Horn and Landells. The motion is carried. To the gallery, you're more than welcome to stay for the remainder of the agenda, but at this point in time, we will return to our agenda. Item 10 is petitions, and item 10.1 is the petition for a footpath, Denison Street, Waganya. The recommendation is that Council 1 notes the petition signed by 148 people from the Waganya community seeking a footpath on the Denison Street, Waganya, between Main and Sarah Streets, and 2 notes that the matter will be investigated and will be considered against other footpath priorities as part of the future capital works program. Do I have somebody to move that? Moved Councillor Shepherd, seconded Councillor Horn. Councillor Shepherd?
I note that of the 148 people that have done the petition, most of them are from Waganya residents, and there's also a letter from the principal supporting this footpath. I'm wondering, it does say that the matter will be investigated and will be considered against footpath priorities, but I imagine the community is interested in knowing when this will, when they'll find out what you think of their petition in terms of the priorities and the lists that we already have. Sorry, that is to Director of Infrastructure Services.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Price. Yeah, look, we would certainly, once we've carried out that evaluation, communicate back to the head petitioner, what that consideration is.
Within what framework, sorry?
Oh, look, I would think it's over the next, probably a couple of weeks. I'm mindful that
Okay.
in our capital works program, we've got a workshop with councillors coming up. And I think within that timeframe, we would sort of, confirm where that, higher priorities are, but, maybe well inside that too.
Great, thank you.
CEO?
Sorry, just to add to that, to our director. When we talk about the capital works program, we're also talking about the capital works program that's proposed in the upcoming budget. So there'll be a process by which we'll put a draft budget out for consultation, usually in May, and then a final consideration in June. So there'll be opportunity to see what is included in those budgets and to make any submissions that the community feels fit in between the draft and the final budget. So that's also an opportunity to see what's proposed going forward and make comment after that.
Councillor Horn, would you like to speak as seconder?
Yes, I would. This further footpath need is highlighted by the use of a new skating facility that they have to go across quite a dangerous road. So, any advance on putting this into place would be really well appreciated. Waganya is actually a very fast growing town and there are lots of young people, and having them walk on the road is not a good idea.
No. Now it's working. Apologies for that. We just experienced a short break in the some of the microphones working. Councillor Horn, you'd just spoken as seconder. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Landells.
Yes, I am a former resident of Waganya for a couple of years, and I lived in the new estate, and I can vouch for the fact that the new estate certainly has grown a lot over the last 10 years. So, and it was quite famous for the fact that there wasn't any footpaths at all in the whole estate. So any footpaths that connect that community, particularly to the local school, will be very important. And as I understand, this one is, there's paths at either end, so it's just a connecting bit in the middle, which always, I think, as I work in this space and for another council, it's always quite an effective use. But I take the point made by CEO Trevor Reno that we have the upcoming budget for the next financial year, cap works to look at seeing where this one might fit in the priorities. Yep.
Thank you, councillor Lendels. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I'd just like to support the motion because having lived here for quite a long time, Wugunya in the past thinks it's with the poor child of Indigo Shire. It's been forgotten. I think this will help make sure it isn't forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Harvey. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll return to you, councillor Shepherd, as the mover. Would you like to sum up?
Yes, I'd just like to thank the Wugunya community for letting us know what their priorities are. And it seems from the other councillors' comments that it certainly is something we should be looking at. And I look forward to hearing after perhaps the budget discussion, whether that is still an important priority for us as well.
Thank you, councillor Shepherd. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 11 is Planning and Corporate Services, and item 11.1 is the February 2025 Finance Report. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council accepts the February 2025 Finance Report. Can I have somebody to move that motion? Moved councillor Shepherd, seconded councillor Dowsley. Councillor Shepherd.
So each month, council reports the year-to-date financial result. The year-to-date figures contained within this report and attachments compare the February result against the year-to-date adopted Q2 forecast. And the income statement shows that council is 581.5K favourable on a year-to-date basis compared to the 24-25 Q2 forecast. But this is mainly due to contract payments and is therefore a timing variance that will reduce as the year progresses.
Thank you, councillor Shepherd. Councillor Dowsley, would you like to speak as the seconder?
Sure. I'd just like to draw attention to the motion that was moved at the previous meeting and the additional information now included in the budget table being the annual budget as compared to the Q2 forecast. Thank you, councillor Burke, for that at the last meeting.
Thank you, councillor Dowsley. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Or councillor?
Could I just ask a question? I'm just wondering, councillor Burke, if that's made any difference to you having that extra column.
It will. In 1 month it doesn't, but over time it will.
Another question, and what will it show you?
It will show the difference from what we thought was going to happen to what has actually happened, and that'll give us learnings. There'll be lots of reasons for it, but it's just more information to look at the performance of the finances.
Thank you. Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll return to the mover. Councillor Shepherd, would you like to sum up? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 11.2 is PA 240171 Gundowring Road, Gundowring, buildings and works in the farming zone. Councillor Dowsley, I'll just finish reading out the title and then I'll come to you. Buildings and works in the farming zone, land subject to inundation overlay and environment significance overlay Schedule 1. Councillor Dowsley, you'd like to move a motion?
I would, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that council defers this item to consider potential alternative locations on the site for the development.
So, councillor Dowsley, can I ask if you can make the addition of the time frame that you'd like to defer that motion to? Is that until the April meeting or is that until the May meeting?
I would like to defer that 1 month until the next meeting.
Okay, so councillors, a deferral is a procedural motion. There will be no debate. You've heard the suggestion from councillor Dowsley. Can I ask somebody to second that motion? Seconded by councillor Harvey. I'll put it to the vote now. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. The item has been deferred until the April meeting. Item 11.3 is PP 230072.2, amendment to a permit, 165 Reed Lane, Gundowring. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council resolves to issue a notice of decision to refuse to amend planning permit PP 230072 by altering condition 8 for the use and development of land for a replacement dwelling at 165 Reed Lane, Gundowring on the following grounds. 1, the proposed alterations to the approved planning permit conditions under PP 230072 is considered contrary to the following clauses of the Indigo planning scheme. 1.1 clause 02.03-5 built environment and heritage. 1.2 clause 02.03-6 housing. 1.3 clause 14.01-S protection of agricultural land. 1.4 clause 14.01-1S land use in a rural zone. 1.5 clause 14.012S sustainable agricultural land use, and 1.6 clause 35.07 farming zone. Do I have somebody to move that motion? Moved Councillor Burke, seconded Councillor Dowsley. Councillor Burke.
Nothing more to add, that's fine.
Councillor Dowsley, would you like to speak?
Yeah, look, I don't have too much to say on this one. I guess my decision today is informed by the planning scheme conditions and the fact that the permit that was applied for, as I understand it, was for a replacement dwelling and not a second dwelling. So that's my decision, is in alignment with the permit being for a replacement dwelling.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsley. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Shepherd.
Yes, I'd just like to say to the applicant that if you'd applied for a second dwelling, then that would have been a completely different process. We are following the planning process as for the application you asked for. And really, if you're wanting to maintain 2 houses on that property, then that is a completely different process. And perhaps the recommendation for you is to look at that process.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 11.4 is PA 240107 for 131 and 131A Franks Road, Chiltern West, PN 9193. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council issues a notice of decision to refuse to grant a planning permit for the use and development of a dwelling and associated outbuildings at Crown Allotments 131 and 131A, Parish of Chiltern West, Franks Road, Chiltern, on the following grounds. 1, the proposal results in an unacceptable risk to future residents from bushfire, particularly from landscape risk, contrary to clauses 13.021S bushfire planning, 13.021L bushfire planning, 44.06 bushfire management overlay, and 53.02 planning for bushfire. 2, the use of the land for a dwelling is inconsistent with state and local policy, in particular A 02.034 natural resource management, B 14.01-16 protection of agricultural land, C 14.01-1L-03 land use in the rural zones, D 16.01-3S rural residential development. 3, the proposal does not provide all-weather access to the land as required by A 16.01-3L-01 rural building siting and design, B 35.07-2 farming zone. 4, the proposal is not consistent with the purpose and decision guidelines of the farming zone, as it does not support or enhance agriculture in any way. Can I have somebody to move that motion? Moved Councillor Harvey, seconded Councillor Landells. Councillor Harvey, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, just briefly. Most of us visited out there today, and it's a very unsuitable place for a house. It's the end of a dirt track. In the event of a fire or indeed a flood, there would be very little chance of the occupants getting out safely. And it backs onto State Park, which is just bush. It's basically just bush, and it's not really a place for a house. And I think our officers have listed quite a few of the reasons for that under the various schemes and statutes that they listed. So I don't think it's a good idea to build a house there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Landells, would you like to speak as seconder?
No, thanks.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Dowsley.
Yeah, I would. I would like to acknowledge the work and detail the applicant has provided as part of this planning permit application. This was an extremely detailed application, and I did read every single document and every report. And having read it all and considered all of the documentation, I'm led to the conclusion that any dwelling would perform the function of supporting a rural lifestyle rather than being a necessity in the agricultural use of the land. Our policies aim to prevent smaller agricultural lots in the farming zone being used as rural living lots. Now, I empathise because it's a beautiful place and I think I'd quite like to live there myself. But at the core of these policies is the proposition that agricultural land is a rare and valuable resource that needs to be preserved for agriculture in the longer term. And as it stands at the moment, that's the way that the planning policy framework is. And as I said, I can't see a way under the current planning scheme of approving the application.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsley. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn.
The preservation of life is, of course, the most important thing in regard to this application, both in fire and in flood.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll return to you, Councillor Harvey. Would you like to sum up?
No, I think it's already been summed up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 12 is infrastructure services and item 12.1 is the February Capital Works report. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council notes the February Capital Works report and year-to-date progress in the delivery of the Capital Works program. To have somebody to move that motion. Moved Councillor Dowsley, seconded Councillor Burke. Councillor Dowsley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Sure, thank you. I guess when I looked at these capital reports, thinking that, you know, we're 8 months into the financial year, I'm looking for what projects haven't yet started and will the money be expended by the June 30th? So are the projects on track and will they be completed within this financial year? I do note on the table, the spreadsheet, the attachment, that there are some projects that have yet to commence, but been assured by Nathan in our briefing that those contracts have been awarded and works are imminent. So I'm satisfied looking at the Capital Works report that we're on track for delivery in this financial year.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsley. Councillor Burke, would you like to speak as the seconder?
No, thanks.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Horn.
I'd just like to say that I thought it was very disappointing to see that several items had to be replaced due to theft from the Chiltern depot. You know, it's a very disappointing thing to have happened, but it's great to see that our teams have reached a number of significant milestones and we're looking pretty good.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll return to you, Councillor Dowsley. Would you like to sum up?
No, I think I've said everything.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsley. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 13 is Community and Economic Development and item 13.1 is the 2019 to 2024 Library Strategy Evaluation. The item is for decision and the recommendation is that Council receives the 2019 to 2024 Library Strategy Evaluation Report. Can I have somebody to move that motion? Moved Councillor Landell, seconded Councillor Horn. Councillor Landells.
Yeah, I get around the Shire a little bit and I think that our libraries are really vibrant places and they also conduct a whole range of community activities, so a lot more than what a traditional library might be. I think it's really quite challenging too when for a Shire like ours where we have towns that are dispersed, we're effectively running 1, 2, 3, 4 libraries at this point in time, and an outreach service to a lot of people that live in the rural areas, and I think I did the sums recently, and around about a little bit less than half the population live in rural areas outside of the 4 major tourist towns. And I think, when you look at some of the amazing libraries up on the border, it can be really easy to look at those and think, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could have that? The reality is we're a very different shire and our profile is totally different, but I think we do a good job coming up with a range of really interesting programs. And I also particularly like in recent times where we've merged customer service facilities with libraries, there's a lot of commonality in those skills, and it also, I'm assuming that it helps to provide some efficiencies too through that. So.
Thank you, Councillor Landels. Councillor Horn, would you like to speak as seconder?
Yes, I think there's quite remarkable increases here in the number of participants in the programs. It's gone from 6,480 up to 13,485. I think that's quite a remarkable achievement. And the other interesting point is in the number of people using our outreach visits out to various locations. We have a bus that goes around to various areas for people who are unable to attend the physical libraries. And the number of people using that service has increased from 590 to 4,032. Quite remarkable.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Horn. I'd like to speak to the motion and say thank you, Councillor Horn, for raising some of those numbers, because I think it is really important to be able to reflect that a service like that is valued and is needed and can be built upon in terms of the outreach capacity of it. I know of many families such as mine that utilise the library services for many of their school holidays activities and different experiences like that. I know that they're a really valued service, and certainly Chiltern Library is the one that I probably use the most. Seeing the new space that's been provided for being well utilised there is such a pleasure to see, particularly in these times as we build connection with our communities. They're such an important meeting place, and it's really important that we have infrastructure that meets the demands of the community in that regard. So I commend the work of the libraries team. I think that they do an extraordinary job. They're such an important linkage with our communities, and welcome the strategy evaluation. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll go back to Councillor Landels. Would you like to sum up?
Yeah, sure. I would also like to just reiterate your words, Mayor Price, to the libraries team for the fantastic work they do, and just for the ideas. I talk to the staff in the libraries and I hear their ideas, what they're thinking of coming up with for ways to engage people. Science Week, I know we've had guest people come in and do talks and different things like that. So, and again, probably similar to you, I go to the Chiltern Library probably more than the other ones, and there's public art in there. There's the tiny art show, which is a really unique little concept. Different things like that. Just so as I say, it's a way to you can look at bigger libraries up on the border and things like that, which are amazing, and we live in a great place where we can get to those if we want to, but the libraries that we have in Indigo Shire are offering something I think really appropriate and customised to what our communities need.
Thank you, Councillor Landels. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. We'll now move to item 14, executive management, and item 14.1 is the strategic internal audit plan. The item is for decision, and the recommendation is that council adopts the strategic or internal audit plan prepared by council's internal auditors for the period of July 2024 to June 2027. Can I have somebody to move that? Can I have somebody to move that? Moved Councillor Harvey, seconded Councillor Horn. Councillor Harvey, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Councillor Horn, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'd just say that it is really important, as myself and Councillor Burke are on the Audit and Risk Committee, there has been sufficient review of this internal audit plan through that committee and by councillors through reviewing the agenda of the audit committee. And it's really important that we have our own strategic internal audit plan and that it does canvass exactly what we would expect and reflect the appetite of council matched with the Audit and Risk Committee. If nobody else would like to speak to the motion, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14.2 is advisory committee minutes. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council receives the attached unconfirmed meeting minutes for the following advisory committees and endorses the officer recommended actions. 1 for the Finance Committee, 2 the Indigo Environment Advisory Committee, 3 the Indigo Community Access Committee, and 4 the Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee. Can I have somebody to move that motion? Moved Councillor Dowsley, seconded Councillor Horn. Councillor Dowsley, would you like to speak to the motion?
Sure. So this is all of the committee meeting minutes that have occurred in the last period. These committees do a tremendous amount of work and provide fantastic advice to council on a variety of topics. You can see the recommendations from those committees in that report. And I'd just like to commend the members of the committees for the outstanding work that they're doing.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsley. Councillor Horn, would you like to speak as seconder?
Yes, I just fully support Councillor Dowsley's comments.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, I'll go back to Councillor Dowsley. Would you like to sum up?
No, thanks.
I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14.3 is informal meetings of councillors' records. The item is for decision. The recommendation is that council accepts the attached informal meetings of councillors' records. Do I have somebody to move that motion? Moved Councillor Horn, seconded Councillor Burke. Councillor Horn, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Councillor Burke, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thanks.
I'll just say what the purpose of the report is. It's largely procedural. The report presents informal meetings of councillors' records to council for recording in the minutes in accordance with Governance Rule 72B(3). If no other councillor would like to speak to the motion and the mover would not like to sum up, then I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Item 14.4 is contracts awarded under Chief Executive Officer delegation for February 2025. The item is for information and there were no contracts awarded by the CEO under delegation between the values of $250,000 and $500,000 for the month of February 2025. Item 15 is notices of motion and there are none. Item 16 is councillors' report. Would any councillor like to make a report to the March meeting on any activities that they have participated in over the last month? Councillor Landells.
Yeah, thanks. I guess this time of the year is probably one of the busiest across Indigo Shire for community events. And I've been to a number of events, both in an official and unofficial capacity. And these include the Stanley Spring Ditch, Rutherglen's Taste of Art Prize, Sandy Creek for the Festival Small Halls, Yakandana Folk Festival, called in briefly to the Beechworth High Country Hop, and also, I guess, March is still going. So this weekend we've got John McEwen Day, which is a big event in Chiltern. So it's just wonderful to see so many. These are largely put on predominantly by volunteers, these events, with tremendous energy and engaging a lot of people in a wide range of music and arts events. And I guess I want to highlight the incredible value and effort in the skill and the huge volume of volunteering hours that occurs across Indigo Shire. I guess we know that anyway. But one thing I have noticed when I've been at some of these events is some of the council staff who work in the community development team who are actually there as volunteers because they're very proud to work in their community and to get involved to that level. And I think that gives a lot of credibility when it comes to working with communities, on grant programs and giving them the support to continue to do the great work they do in community. So.
Thank you, Councillor Landels. Would any other councillor like to make a councillor report? Councillor Dowsley.
Thank you. Last Wednesday, the 19th of March, myself, the Mayor, CEO, a number of staff members met with Helen Haynes and rode the Rutherglen Loops. We visited a few different businesses during that bike ride, Lake Moodmere Estate, Stanton and Colleen Wines and the Big Four Rutherglen Holiday Park. And I just wanted to thank those business owners for welcoming us on our bike ride. It was really fantastic to meet with them and learn about the impact that Rutherglen Loops is having on their business.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsley. Would any other councillor like to make a report to the meeting? No. If not, I'll go to item 16.1, the Mayor's Diary for the 1st of February through to the 28th of February 2025. That's for information. Item 17 is the decisions register. Again, for information. If no questions, I'll go to item 18, general business. Do any councillors have any general business for the council meeting? Councillor Horn?
Yes, I would like to ask the CEO if we've had any further word from Department of Transport or whomever about the Main Street Rutherglen, please.
Thank you, Councillor, for that question, and through you, Mayor Price. We have some engineering documents have been shared with us, and basically for some technical advice from our engineering staff in regards to possible works in Main Street Rutherglen. So we have seen those. However, we haven't yet seen any sort of comms or engagement plan about, or any information about when any works may commence, and any engagement that's proposed before that. So we're really we're waiting for that. Certainly from, I guess from my perspective, we look forward to, well, we're happy that the state government was able to hold on to the $1.3 million, I believe, the amount was, in terms of funding safety works in the Main Street. We're looking forward to those works getting done. But we have yet to see any dates, and we yet to see any comms plan as to how that will be rolled out. So I do await that. Yeah, I think it's probably an opportunity for ourselves, if with your support, that we may well write to the task that information on your behalf. I note you've asked this question a number of times. I haven't had a great answer for you, so perhaps what I might do is take on board the opportunity to write to them to get some more information for the next meeting and see what they have to say for us.
I would appreciate that. Also, I have another question about the unfortunate...
Sorry, Councillor Horn, can I just ask, the contents of that letter, can we be explicit? I think that your intention was to get an update on where they're up to, but also to ask the question about, do they intend to do any community engagement? Sorry, did you just want to confirm that with the CEO?
Yes, thank you, please. I think there are a lot of people in Rutherglen are waiting for further consultation, but if there are plans to have some sort of engagement project, yes, we'd be very pleased to hear about that. And it's very encouraging to hear that MP Jacqueline Symes says it's one of her top projects. We're getting a bit impatient. But yes, the other item that I would like to ask you about is with following the avian bird flu situation. I believe there's some other information coming out to the community from Vic.
So, Councillor Horn, is that a question, or I think we've been provided with that information? Is that, did you just want to reiterate when that pop-up is? Is that
yes, if you could please.
Yeah, so I've got that information in front of me. So Agriculture Victoria have held one pop-up, and we understand that was at very short notice, and we appreciate that the community may not have been able to attend that. To that end, we have talked with them about the need for a second and wanting to give as much lead time on when that would be, and we can confirm that another pop-up will be held on Saturday, the 29th of March from 9 a.m. till 12 noon at the Rutherglen Scout Hall, which is 104 to 106 High Street, Rutherglen, Victoria, 3685. Councillor Horn, did you want to make more comment about that?
No, other than to say I think having it on a weekend is a good idea because lots of people were unable to attend the other meeting because they're at work. So, yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. Would any other councillor like to raise an item for general business? If not, I will. Oh, sorry, CEO.
Thanks, Mayor Price. So it was. Mayor, with the indulgence of council laws, I'd like to seek your support for a motion. I know this is late notice. It relates to the hospital advocacy that the council has been doing. And just to reflect just briefly, this council and the previous council have both indicated its unanimous support for to keep advocating for a new hospital on a new site for Albury Wodonga. So you will recall that Indigo, Towong and Alpine had an historic tri-council meeting back in August where basically, amongst a lot of things, called for a new hospital and a new site. The new council on 10th of December also unanimously supported that advocacy effort. So alongside with that, I note that the Wodonga Council at its meeting last night, and I'll make reference to an agenda item on their agenda of 9.5, and basically they're proposing to put a motion to the National General Assembly of the Local Government Australia Conference, which is held in June. Now, I note that at those conferences on an Australia-wide basis, any motions to be considered at that conference usually needs to be a strategic type motion on an Australia-wide basis, so they don't entertain motions that relate to local areas. But what's proposed by Wodonga to put to that conference is a motion that says, along the lines of that, it calls upon Wodonga, calls upon the Australian government to make dedicated funding available to the states for regional hospital infrastructure through a national hospital infrastructure fund allocated on the basis of priority needs. The deadline for the motions is the end of March, so we don't really have an opportunity to bring you a proper report on the whole hospital advocacy issue. But if I can refer you back to those two meetings, there's full reports in them. So the August meeting last year as well as December. So I think the report and the information is clear, the evidence is clear that we need a new hospital, a new site. So if I can use that as a basis for this request. And the motion I would ask for your support on is as follows, that Indigo Council, and so I'm reading the same motion as Wodonga put last night. So basically that Indigo Council also calls upon the Australian government to make dedicated funding available to the states for regional hospital infrastructure through a national hospital infrastructure fund allocated on the basis of priority needs. And second dot point, that the CEO be authorised to issue a letter of support for such a motion or a similar motion. Wodonga Council proposes to submit to the 2025 National General Assembly of the Local Government Association as described in its agenda item 9.5 of its 24th of March meeting.
Thank you, CEO. That's what's proposed, councillors. So I'm going to ask that someone move exactly what the CEO has just suggested. Can I have someone to move that motion? Moved by councillor Dowsley, seconded by councillor Horn. Given that there's no briefing paper, would you like us to speak to those motions still as with the usual process, CEO? Councillor Dowsley, would you like to say anything as the mover of that motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think as the CEO has mentioned that we do have previous council reports outlining the very strong case for a single site Greenfield Hospital in Albury Wodonga, that the 558 million is inadequate funding, drastically reduced capacity, minimal actual expansion when you look at the net effect, no increase in critical services and missing some of those essential facilities like the helipad, etc., from the original clinical services plan. So this is a very strong case for a new hospital on a new site, and very supportive of any advocacy effort to promote that plan.
Thank you, Councillor Dowsley. Councillor Horn, would you like to speak as seconder?
Yes, I'm very happy that we're supporting this unified advocacy for this very important issue.
Thank you, Councillor Horn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I would like to say that I appreciate councillors' appetite to accept, to move and second this motion at short notice with the insistence of the CEO, because I think that we, as much as we can, if we can keep our advocacy consistent with those that we've been working with, it presents a really strong case, which has been our intention from the outset. To that end, I'm pleased that we will be able to support this at the Australian Local Government Association National General Assembly, of which we will have attendees from Indigo Shire Council to that later this year. In terms of the other matters for advocacy in that space, of course, we've had the rally in Melbourne where all of the community went down and to make our voices heard on the steps of Parliament, to listen to a question from the member for Benambra and the very unsatisfactory answer from the Minister for Health. Since then, our advocacy has continued, and we have, with the collective power of that group, secured meetings with the New South Wales Minister for Health and some shadow ministers as well. That group has insisted that Indigo Shire Council be part of the representatives that are included in those meetings, and we have been declined representation at those meetings, even though we insist that it is our rightful place to be part of them. The ministers seem to want to be able to tell us exactly who should be in those meetings and limit the people that can attend. Similarly, there are other meetings that are being sought, and we again are insisting that our involvement should be included as part of those meetings. The fact that there is an alliance means that it's the collective power of that alliance that's being able to get these meetings. It shouldn't just be the two representatives that are then allowed to meet with some of these ministers and make their representation. To add to that, the community were really strong in their demonstration to us at the Victorian Parliament to say we want to be involved. That's why we're here in numbers, and those that couldn't be there were there in on social media or in spirit. And we've had a lot of feedback since that day to say thank you for your advocacy in that space. And that's why this weekend on Saturday the 29th at 10 a.m. till 11 a.m. at QE2 Square, there's a community rally about the new hospital on a new site. There's speakers that people can go along and hear from, and more of the community continuing to show that there's momentum. This fight is not being paused. It's not, we're not going to fold them, as was the direction from the Victorian Health Minister. So I encourage you to come along and attend. It will be a great day. It will be very informative, and it's a rally really to recognise the community that really are at the forefront of this campaign, which is exactly where we want them to be. So unfortunately, I won't be there. I'll be on some leave, but I would encourage all of our community at Indigo Shire to be as well represented as they were on the steps of Victorian Parliament. If any other councillor would like to speak to that motion, otherwise I'll go to Councillor Dowsley either to sum up, or we can move the motion. We can put the motion, sorry. Councillor Dowsley, would you like to sum up? No? If not, I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. If there are no other items for general business for the March council meeting, I declare the meeting closed at 8:02 p.m. and advise the community that the next council meeting will be Tuesday, the 29th of April 2025 at 6:30